What's the highest stakes hand of poker you've played?
Highest stakes in terms of monetary value?
Monetary or personal life value, up to you.
Bellagio, $6,700, and it was against Doyle Brunson.
Wow, that sounds like quite a hand. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass, and today I'm joined by Justin Lee, the writer and director of Apache Junction, which is a new Western film coming to theaters, digital, and VOD on September 24, 2021. We're going to talk to him in just a second, but first, let's check out the trailer. And while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. Helps me out a lot. Thank you.
Turn around. I don't like to shoot a man in the back.
Well, I wouldn't give you the satisfaction.
Be ashamed to waste it.
One man took on three.
Killed your boy.
I'm more than a man, I'm a monster.
I'd love to show the noose and see him ride the pine straight to the devil.
So now I'm coming for the whole roster.
There has to be some sort of law and order.
You're gonna have to shoot your own way out of this one.
Must be in my brain.
I'm faster.
Something you can't tame.
Hey, Justin.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Oh man, busy.
I can imagine. It's a full day for you.
We're turning my I bought some property and we're turning it into a mini Robert Rodriguez backlot, kind of like what he has down in Austin. So
Oh, that's perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of set building going on and all kinds of stuff. So it's fun.
Well, let's talk about that. Who cares about this other movie? Let's talk about that. So thanks so much for joining me. This is Justin Lee. He's the writer and director of Apache Junction, which is coming to theaters, digital, and VOD on September 24, 2021. So the film it's a Western, right? Which is, not a very common thing to be released now. So I guess it sounds like maybe this is part of your life. So what was the inspiration for this? How did you kind of come up with this story, and what made you want to make a Western film?
This is, I keep losing count. This is like my fourth or fifth Western. So my grandfather was a huge influence growing up. He had Westerns on all the time, whether they were John Wayne Westerns, Clint Eastwood, F Troop on Nick at Night. I mean, just there was always a Western on. So it got kind of embedded in me. And so when I remember when I first started filmmaking, someone's like, hey, you need to go out and be bold, and you got to make your first movie that no one else could go make. And you have to leave a mark so that people go, holy cow, that was made for that budget, or that was made and so that's what got me started down the Western path. And in all these interviews, I get asked this, and it like I get asked literally, I would say I've been on average making one a year. I get asked to make probably 3 Westerns a year.
Oh, wow.
So it's one of those things where I wouldn't say it pigeonholed, because I make way more movies outside of Westerns, but I definitely seem to be, asked to make a lot of Westerns. They, I don't think studios make them, I know studios don't make them as often because they just don't do well internationally. There's something that America seems to be, North America seems to be very, still watches. They do really, really well with physical. They seem to be doing a little bit better, as I've now learned, with VOD. It was a shock to make. We made Apache Junction. It broke for COVID. We shot for like 2 weeks. It broke for COVID. I drove from New Mexico through the night back to Washington State. And when I got home, I had another Western called Badland had came out a few months prior, but it hit VOD. And I landed at home, and all of a sudden, it was the same time Tiger King had just came out on Netflix. All of a sudden, Badland was the #3 most watched movie on Netflix, and I was like, "What is that? This is crazy." It was like so bizarre. So obviously, there's a digital market now. I think it just took a little while for kind of an older generation to really figure the whole the whole video on demand thing out. It's now more accessible, and whatever. So now we're starting to see better numbers in that marketplace.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also when you now have everyone, like you said, like everyone's kind of locked down, the older generation is kind of has to figure it out if they want this content. And also maybe people just
Right.
wanted to see what outside was like. Westerns have the expansive landscapes and kind of being out in the open, and maybe that was appealing to people that maybe didn't leave their house for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, to your point, that it does seem very popular. Maybe it's just something that like is not in my radar, but that's understandable. It's a very big country, and there's a lot of films out there that I don't watch, so it's good to know that there's a thriving market out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, not that a lot of my stuff's been historical per se, and but yeah, that's where our myth and legends and stuff really
Mhm.
originated from, was that era, right? I mean, dime novels and things of that nature, and the quote unquote anti-hero and those kinds of things that came out of that era of our time frame. And so I mean, I love westerns, regardless of, even if they're quirky, weird. Like Ballad of Buster Scruggs was so quirky and weird. And
I love that one.
there's some really quirky, weird ones, and then there's ones that are completely over the top. I don't know. We talk about Django as like it's a western, but it was kind of pre. It was more Civil War-ish than it was,
Yeah.
or pre-Civil War, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's so over the top of the, it's so Tarantino. So seeing Tarantino play in that sandbox of like 6 shooters and whatnot was awesome. But yeah, there's so many different versions of the Western that you can make. You kind of have to figure out what it is you're doing, that your kind of style of that, and go with it.
Yeah, and it seems like well, at least from my limited single film experience, it seems like your style is kind of like strong anti-hero, strong female characters, kind of I think it seems like a more traditional type of Western story. But what was the inspiration for this specific film? Did towns like this actually exist? Did you have these kinds of towns that had like an uneasy truce with the law to kind of just make everyone's life easier, or was this just something that you thought would be a cool thing that might have existed in the frontier?
So yes, these towns did exist. Is Apache Junction the same Apache Junction today that I have in the movie? No. I don't think Apache Junction, the real Apache Junction in Arizona, I don't think they got their name actually till like 1929. However, that whole area legitimately was, that was Apache land, right? When the U.S. Army came in, and it kind of, in terms of historical accuracies in Apache Junction, that is correct. The Army came in and there was a huge war going on. It was also part of the last frontier of the Wild West, where people were hiding out and could kind of try to get away from the law. There's towns like that all over the place. I kind of pride myself on knowing a lot about the 1800s, especially the later 1800s. I've gone to a lot of these old towns, a lot of the old ghost towns. I've shot in them, and I've been to a lot of them and know their histories. And I mean, I personally don't think that movies have truly shown how gnarly things really were in these towns, other than the show Deadwood.
I was about to say Deadwood was the one I was thinking of when you're mentioning that.
Deadwood,
Yeah.
for as gnarly as it was, probably still didn't. I shot in Nevada City, Montana for my first movie, which is a real town.
Mhm.
The bar we shot in, and this is no joke, had 1 murder and 1 rape almost per night
Oh wow.
for like
Huh.
7 years. So when you think about that, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's that many people in that bar. Like, why would you keep coming back?
Historically, that actually, it wasn't called Nevada City, it was called 14 Mile, because for 14 miles on that small creek, for 14 miles, there was shanties set up where people had small gold claims. So for every quarter of a mile, there'd be a saloon and a brothel, right?
Okay.
You got to think, every single, just like if you watch Deadwood, every single night, someone would take their gold they got that day, go get drunk or go get a prostitute or whatever, and get in fights all the time. Road agents were trying to steal gold. It was just a constant state of lawlessness in those kinds of places. And we only hear a fraction of that in kind of certain things that were documented. Same thing, Nevada City, you'll go up on Boot Hill, the graveyard up above it, and there's a whole family that was murdered. It was like 3 kids and a husband and wife, murdered by road agents right next to them. And I'm not kidding.
Oh, wow.
2 feet next to their graves, the 2 road agents that murdered that family are buried.
That's I guess that's quick karma, I guess.
That right there was
Yeah.
that wraps up everything about that area. It's really crazy, man. There's so many stories to tell, which is part of why I like making westerns.
Yeah, it sounds like that's why you're making, at least one Western a year, but you could make multiple. It sounds like there's so many crazy stories to tell. And speaking of crazy stories, I just kind of want to know, how did you get Trace Adkins in this film? My thought is you were filming and he just kind of showed up on a horse. Like he just was in the area. He was probably already in the cowboy regalia. He just kind of comes up and is like, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" And you're like, "We're filming the movie." He's like, "Great." And then he just like steps right in. Is that kind of how it happened?
Not at all. No. I'd worked with Trace on Badland. I had him in. He came in for the opening of the movie Badland, only a day. I'd watched Trace's career in terms of as an actor, and of course I knew his music career. And I personally didn't feel like he was getting utilized to the best of his potential in a lot of films.
Mm-hmm.
So I only got to bring him in. There was only enough money and certain things in a day to bring him in on a role for Badland for one day. So when we came around Apache, I was like, I really want Trace to come in and work with him multiple days because I really want to work with him as director to actor. And so that's how we got Trace. He liked working with me on Badland. He came and worked with me on Apache, and I love Trace in this movie.
Yep.
And then flash forward from Apache, I just worked this summer in Hawaii on a movie, and he's my lead in that. And we worked together for a few weeks. I love Trace. He's great, and watching him grow as an actor has been an amazing, awesome thing to watch happen.
I think what's interesting to me was, so I didn't know I knew he was a country superstar. I didn't know what he looked like or even how old he was. So when I was watching the film, I was trying to figure out who he was, and I didn't pick him out like that. He did such a good job just as this kind of like gruff captain. He kind of felt like he personified that role. So yeah, I think he definitely is he's utilized well here, but he seemed to be just as good as any of the other actors out there.
Yeah, I love him. And what's interesting about Apache Junction and that character is you think he's kind of the villain, but if you really dig deep and think about it, he's just trying to do his job.
Mm-hmm.
He's in this lawless area. He's got an accord with Tom Jane's character, and he's just trying to do his job to the best of his ability. And he's getting labeled kind of the villain. And it's really Oswald Pike is, Ed Morrone's character, Oswald Pike, is really the dastardly villain there. But
yeah, and you can tell because he has that bowler hat. You can tell he's the villain instantly.
Yeah, the bowler hat and the straight razor.
Yeah. But one thing this probably is because you respect him as an actor, but I was like, there's no song. Like I almost expected like some sort of Western song from Trace Adkins in the film, but maybe that's because you really wanted to utilize his acting ability.
Yeah, I think that's also, as cool as it is, it's kind of, I think people probably expect that. Oh, hey, if you're putting a country music star in a movie, you're going to have a country song. It hasn't really been something that, like I've been working to get Trace out of Westerns, honestly, which is why this movie this summer I shot, I put him in something different than a Western, because it's like kind of, as much as I have probably fought to not get pigeonholed in Westerns, I think Trace wants to get out and do other things and show his broad acting range, and other things. And I think we did that this summer. We got him out of that genre and put him in something completely different.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I know we have limited time because I know you have a very busy schedule. I'd like to jump to, I call it the lightning round. It's just very lightweight questions that kind of relate to the film and the characters. I want to see how you relate to some of the things that happen in the film. You can feel free not to answer them, but I try to keep them very answerable. And I think you're probably going to hit most of them because most of them are cowboy related. It sounds like you have an extensive cowboy experience. So the first question is, do you own a cowboy hat?
I own a cowboy hat from previous movies.
Excellent. So is it like a wide brim hat, like a bowler cap? What kind of hat is it?
I have a wide brim and I have a bowler hat.
Awesome. So you can be villain or hero depending on how you want to do it. Have you ever ridden a horse?
Yes.
Awesome. Have you ever fired a revolver?
Yes.
What's the highest stakes hand of poker you've played?
Highest stakes in terms of monetary value?
Monetary or personal life value, up to you.
Bellagio, $6,700, and it was against Doyle Brunson.
Wow, that sounds like quite a hand. I assume it didn't end in violence. You're still here, so maybe you won.
It did not. Doyle Brunson is massively respected poker player. and he folded, and I couldn't believe it.
That sounds like it should be your own movie. Like that sounds like a perfect movie too.
It was absolutely. It was one of. I sat down at a 15:30 table in the Bellagio, and within 20 minutes, Doyle Brunson was escorted over to the table and sat down, and I was like, "What is happening?" Then another 30-40 minutes, he was biding his time and got in a hand, and everyone folded, and it was just me and Doyle, and I was going, "Holy cow!" And I had trips, and it was like trip 8s, and the experience of someone of that magnitude, literally, he knew he was beat. He never needed to go any further, and he folded, and it was a huge hand.
That's an awesome story. I feel like that should be like a short film or something. That's awesome.
Probably not only the greatest poker experience I've had, but probably one of the only poker experience of substance that I have.
That's the only one you need, right? You have that story. There's nothing else you need right now. Have you ever been in a bar fight?
I have been in a bar fight in as much as I've pulled a friend out of a bar fight.
All right. What is the most lawless place you've been to?
The most lawless. Ooh, wow. What a great question.
Yeah, it depends on your perspective too, right?
Lawless place. You know what I'm going to say? Germany, which is because they're so diehard police. But I saw more. I went to Oktoberfest, and not only it wasn't a bar fight, but not only did I get in a fight, I saw more fights happening and just craziness with police just kind of sitting back watching and not doing anything. It was a very eye-opening experience.
Sounds like it was kind of your own Apache Junction kind of experience, yeah, right? Like
in my early 20s, I used to go surfing down in Baja, and I saw cartel craziness all the time. So those are the two places.
Yeah, those both sound like very interesting experiences. And last question is, you're a cowboy. Do you wear your revolver on your stomach or on your hip?
If I was doing it, I would have a cross draw from my hip. So from my left hip drawing across to my right side.
There you go. And so the film is Apache Junction. It comes out September 24th, 2021. And I mean, it sounds like you already have multiple other projects. So after this film is out, what else can people look forward to? This Hawaii project? I'm sure you have like 3 or 4 Westerns already lined up as well.
I have a movie coming out that was shot called Maneater. And then I've got another Western called The Tale of Two Guns.
So just constantly, I love to hear that you're so busy, because I know that the industry has been kind of weird, but it sounds like you're just making more and more movies. So.
And doing everything to kind of keep things in my own hemisphere, so that I can keep my friends working, I can keep working, and that I can just keep cranking content out. Yeah.
Well, that is awesome news, and thanks so much for your time. This is Justin Lee, the writer and director of Apache Junction, and it sounds like a host of other Western movies. You can check out his other work and check out Apache Junction on September 24th. Thank you so much.
Hey, David, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Partner, you ready to draw? That was Justin Lee, the writer and director of Apache Junction, which is coming to theaters, VOD, and digital on September 24, 2021. If you liked this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.